We've made it to the final week of the regular season, and now it's about rivalries. Jake, last week I went 7-5, bringing my record to 52-49 plus 3 units overall. You're 53-38. Last week you went 6-3, so you've been crushing it this season.
Yeah, it's been a very successful season. Such a shame that it's the last week. Just sad to see it go. We got a lot of bowl games still to come, and we're going to really have to enjoy this one last ride.
Usually these are the toughest games to pick. Pretty much anything can happen. It doesn't matter where teams are ranked, doesn't matter how good you think they are. It's a rivalry, so it can go any way. And this week's game, the one that we're going to talk about first, kind of has that feel. Iowa, a top 20 team nationally. Nebraska on a 3-game losing streak. They haven't looked very good, and now Nebraska is a favorite at home. So what do you like in this?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite lines I've ever seen. Not just because Nebraska is the favorite as a home underdog versus a road favorite, but look at that over under 25.5. And it started at 28.5. That means it's gone down 3 points during the week, which at 28.5 is like 12%, 12.5%. It's gone down to like an eighth of its original total when it was already the lowest of all time. And beyond that, I'm still on this under. Iowa unders, match made in heaven. But Nebraska's got a very solid defense themselves. Top 15 in both scoring and yards allowed. And Iowa's offense, as we know, they're not really trying to put up a ton of points. Their strategy, get stops against Chubba Purdy, the third-string quarterback who's now starting for Nebraska, and play the punting game, punts to win, get enough first downs, win the field position game. I don't even know if there's going to be a touchdown scored in this game. These teams have been scoring less and less as the weeks have gone on. Iowa's offense has gotten a little bit better as the weeks have gone on. But even so, Nebraska hasn't scored more than 17 in the last 3 weeks. Iowa hasn't scored more than 20 since Cade McNamara went down. I just don't really envision a world where either team gets more than 2 touchdowns in this game. I love the under here, and I'm certainly eyeing Nebraska minus 2.5 as well.
The last 10 times these two teams have played, the lowest final total was last year, and it got to 41 points. Nebraska scored 24 that day in Iowa City. Now, Nebraska's offense is in the bottom 17. Iowa obviously is 130th, which is dead last nationally. But the defenses have been the story. Iowa's D, 7th nationally, Nebraska 15th. Like you said, the really good defenses is what's driving this number down. But only 2 of the 11 games Nebraska's played in this year went under 25.5. And I know Iowa's D is really good, and it's going to be like 30 degrees out or something. It could potentially snow. But Nebraska's got a new quarterback with Chubba Purdy who looks way better than the other 2 they've been playing with. And I know you mentioned Chubba being a third stringer, but it doesn't look like he should have been third string. It looks like he should have been first string this entire way through because he's the one who has, at this point, the least amount of turnovers per pass attempt and obviously per carry. I'm going to take Nebraska here, minus 2.5. This is a classic special spot, just like Clemson was last week, being the unranked home favorite versus a ranked road team. I'm also going to take the over. I think that the over is a lock because of history. History tells us 10 games in a row, this would not have hit. Iowa and Nebraska, for whatever reason, even though Iowa always has a good defense, for whatever reason, it always goes over. So I'm going to have to go opposite of you this week just because of history. Next is UNC at NC State. NC State, a home dog. Did you know this, Jake? NC State has won 6 of the last 9 meetings against UNC, and that they're on a 2-game winning streak against Mac Brown. You probably did because I told you to research this video. But UNC barely held on to beat Duke a couple weeks ago, and then they got crushed by Clemson last week, and now they've got to go on the road in a rivalry game. It's going to be at night. NC State is in a totally different spot. They beat Clemson, Miami, Wake, and then last week they took down Virginia Tech. Now they're in position for a 10-win season if they were to win this week and then win their bowl game. They started off 4-3 with losses to Louisville, Duke, and Notre Dame, but clearly they have stepped up. The offense has gotten a lot better since then. Now, obviously, the best offense on the field is going to be the 3rd-ranked nationally UNC offense led by Drake May. But NC State's got the number 22 defense in the country, and they held Louisville to 13, and then Miami and Wake to just 6. So in this spot, knowing the history, I'm going to have to take the points because they've been dominant against their rival.
Yeah, this is a very interesting line. As you said, UNC's offense has been great and their defense has been horrible, which should be a recipe for huge points. We only have an over-under total of 55, which I don't know if the bookmakers are implying that NC State's defense is going to kind of win out and get some stops. If that's the case, I certainly like NC State as well.
Next is Texas A&M at LSU. LSU has to give 11.5.
They do, but again, I'm looking at the total in this game. LSU overs have hit every single week except for one, which was last week when they made the number like 73 against Georgia State, some completely absurd number, which they were even close to hitting on that. This week, we're back down to a reasonable number, 66.5. And it's only so low because Texas A&M's defense has been pretty solid so far this season. However, if you look into the numbers, they're dominant at home and pretty pedestrian on the road. They're giving up 30 points a game this season on the road. And look where the game is, right in Death Valley, in Baton Rouge. Jaden Daniels is on fire. He's probably playing the best of any player in the country right now. I think they kind of want to get him the Heisman, and that means big stats, big points. Loving the over in this game, 66.5.
Yeah, when you first mentioned that you like the over, I thought back to the 2018 game when it went to 7 overtimes and both of them hit 70. And actually, when I looked, that was the last game that this over of 66.5 would have hit. Now, I like that even though Jimbo's gone, it still seems like this Texas A&M team wants to win. You know, they beat South Carolina, they kept it close with Ole Miss, and then they blew out Mississippi State. Now they're playing an LSU defense that ranks in the bottom 30 nationally. So I'm actually going to take the points here at 11.5, and I'm going to ride the over with you because why not? Jaden Daniels is looking like he's trying to go out and win the Heisman. Next is Northwestern at Illinois. Illinois having to give 6 points. And honestly, I don't know how these teams match up. I don't care at all. Northwestern's the Big Ten story of the year after they started 2-3, and now they're going bowling whether they win this game or not. In this last month, they're 3-1, and their only loss was to Iowa by 3. So I think they've covered 5 in a row, and 6 points is just ridiculous in any Big Ten West game. So just like last week, I'm going to take them on the money line because I think they could win outright too.
I don't really understand why Northwestern is continually getting disrespected by the books like this. They've continually won these games, not just on the spread, but money line as well. They're looking really strong. You know, it seems like one of the situations where the books are just not adjusting from their almost preseason expectations of them. This line should be even, if not Northwestern favored, and I like the money line as well.
Next is Auburn at Alabama. Alabama giving 14 points. Big rivalry game, but obviously different stakes for both teams.
Yeah, massive rivalry game here. The Iron Bowl, absolutely classic game. Love Alabama in the spot. They're just playing absolutely unbelievable football right now. They're really peaking as the season is ending at the correct time. Auburn, on the other hand, been pretty dreadful this season throughout. I know that they have 6 wins and they're going to make it to a bowl game, but they just lost last week to New Mexico State by 21. This is a team that's not playing particularly well. Alabama also has an outside shot at making the college football playoff. So they could really use an impressive beatdown performance here to bolster that standing. Rivalry game here. Saban's going to get them pumped up. Auburn just doesn't have the offense to compete. They don't have the defense to compete. This one could be a pretty nasty one in my opinion.
Yeah, by default, I just have to auto fade Auburn. Bama has a ton to play for. Like you said, outside shot at the playoffs, so they're not going to let off. And Auburn's going to come out inspired, I'm sure, because it is a rivalry game. But when Alabama gets up, I think they're just going to end up folding and quitting, and Bama probably wins this one by 21 plus. Next is Ohio State at Michigan. Michigan's at home given 3.5 points. And honestly, I hate this line. It feels like it should have been Michigan -5, but I can't justify taking Ohio State after I watched them play in this game the last 2 years. Michigan last week was in the look-ahead spot against Maryland, so it was a lot closer than it should have been. But because it was close, I think that we know that they were looking ahead and focusing all their efforts and all their attention to this week. And for that reason, I feel pretty good about them, especially being at home. My only hesitation with that 3.5 is that I think Michigan's going to run the ball a lot. I think they're going to try to melt the clock, and it could come down to a situation where Ohio State has the ball and they're driving, and it'll take a Michigan stop to beat Ohio State by 3. For that reason, I lean taking money line here at -150 on BroThrow. So I'm going to say my pick is -3.5 to be fair, but I will be playing the money line just to be safe, Jake. I don't want to take any risks and be pissed off that Michigan won by 3 and I lost. You know what I mean?
We've been kind of tracking this line over the course of the season. Obviously, as Big Ten fans, this is the premier game of the season, the game as it is called. And it's kind of fluctuated all season, but it kind of stabilized at Michigan -6 for a while. And that's what it was before last week as well. And then it dropped all the way to 3.5 because they only won by 7 against Maryland. Seems like it's a combination of that, Harbaugh not being on the sideline, their new coach, Sharon Moore, coaching in a very, let's just call it conservative fashion. This is a family show after all. I won't say what we actually text each other about him. And people don't want to be on Michigan. But I don't really see any reason why the line should have dropped 3 points from last week to this week. This game is at Michigan. Michigan still has one of the best defenses in the country. So does Ohio State, to be fair. But Michigan's offense, I think, has looked a lot stronger this year than Ohio State's. Ohio State if Michigan decides to double team or even triple team Marvin Harrison Jr., what are they going to do? Are they going to really devote themselves to a huge run game and try to run it at the teeth of that top-rated run defense in the country? I love the under on this game. Both these teams have great defenses. I see a lot of running and clock draining. I don't see a ton of touchdowns at all. I also lean towards Michigan -3.5 here, just because the line has dropped so far, and I don't think it really should have. I am worried about the hook. I think money line might be a safer play as well. That's probably a smart way to go about it. But Michigan and the under is where I'm going.
Well, there's another game with a higher total, and I know that you typically like to take Washington in those spots. 68 is their total against Washington State this week. So where are you leaning?
High total, but Penix is a gunslinger, and Cam Ward is a pretty good quarterback in and of his own. So this is the Apple Cup. It was set to be the last game in this rivalry, but it was recently renewed to a 5-year extension, which I think is awesome for college football. I would love to see more of these rivalry games get extended in non-conference play. Looking at you, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, a couple other ones, Texas A&M, Texas. But Washington has been, obviously one of the best teams in the country this season. They're ranked number 4, and with Jordan Travis's injury, I personally think that FSU is out of the playoff completely, even if they go undefeated. So Washington's in a great spot to make the playoffs here. They're going to win this game for sure. I think they're going to want to run it up on Wazoo to get Penix back into that Heisman discussion. He was a huge minus odds favorite earlier in the season. He's back to now fallen 3rd behind Daniels and Bo Nix. I still think as long as Washington can make the playoffs and they beat Bo Nix next week in the Pac-12 championship game, Penix will win the Heisman. So it'd be nice for them to get some extra stats here. Like the over, but I'm going to make my official pick here, Washington -16.5. I think they're going to, just boat race them and try to make a statement here.
Even though it's a rivalry game, it's almost never close. You look at the last 10 meetings, Washington State's only covered 16.5 4 times, and they only won this game outright twice. This year, it's a different vibe because Washington State's been playing a little bit better, and Washington's focused on a championship rematch against Oregon. And I just think this could be a game where Washington wins by 2 touchdowns and then kind of cools off. So I'm not going to play it. It's way too many points for me. But if I was going to take something, it would probably be the over, knowing that Cam Ward's got to fight back against Penix, who is trying to play for the Heisman. And last is BYU at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State having to give 17 points at home, but it makes sense. BYU's 1 game away from bowl eligibility, and they damn near beat OU last week. But the fact is they've been horrible on the road. 4 of their last 5 wins came at home. But I just think this game means a lot more to BYU than it does to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State already has 8 wins. They're not playing for much outside of, and I don't even think it would give them better bowl position. So they're really playing for 9 wins, whereas BYU has something meaningful that they need to get to. I hate the pick just because it is on the road and they've been so bad in this spot, but I love their special uniforms, and I think they're going to show up the way they did when they beat Arkansas just a few weeks ago and actually upset them outright. I'm not going to say BYU wins this. I'm not even going to say they keep it within 10, but 17 points is just too many for a team fighting for a bowl game.
And let's not forget new BYU quarterback Jake Retzlaff, a rare Jewish quarterback at the Mormon University. That's a good enough reason to bet them as any.
I like that note. Well, on that note, Jake, you can take any of these bets that we've talked about today at plus 100 odds if you go to BroThrow.com/YouTube. I linked it in the description box below. You can sign up for free from any state in the U.S. and place totals, money lines, or spreads at better odds than you'll find anywhere else. If you bet $25 on the spread or on the total on BroThrow, you'll win $25. You don't pay any vig. So Jake and I play all of our bets there, and we have been all season long. But Jake, I will talk to you after rivalry week. Hopefully we get some wins, and then we're gonna have a ton of videos to make going into bowl season.
Absolutely. Have a great Thanksgiving.